the sphere of FMD control. He knows the situation of international animal health, and I think he knows a lot about managing change in an uncertain environment. So given your portfolio of things that you have to cover in your job, Nigel, I think the UK experience of over the last few years in terms of FMD control, how you're managing the process of change and capacity building, and how you contribute to the global situation. We're looking forward to hearing you and to Luke now. Thank you.
Take a slightly quirky approach to this and think about innovation and what it can do to you and how you need to harness it for good. So innovation is one thing, making it have impact is another, and we're going to look together at two examples of doing that, very basic. So those of you who've been in sessions when your head has been made to spin by your colleagues because they're a slightly different discipline to you, and may stick equations on the screen, you won't get that from me. But hopefully some things of interest as we go through, and Keith, do tell me off if I start to run far too long. So the things that I thought I'd talk to you about is modelling, and the UK's had a long experience of working with modelling and how we might apply it to disease emergencies. Knowledge transfer, because this is something that EuFMD is so strong on, and use of new techniques to share knowledge is something that I'm really impressed with EuFMD's capability in, and we've harnessed that in the UK, so a little bit about that. And then finally, back to more the theme of the conference, which is how do we maintain that pipeline of innovation? Is innovation going to continue to happen, and how do we make that be the case? So 2001 was our starting point. It always would be. If anybody from the UK turns up at a FMD conference and doesn't say 2001, something's badly wrong. So we, amongst other things we learned a lot about models. Going into 2001, we had no internal modelling capability. We had access, however, to a very excellent model run by our colleagues in New Zealand called the interspread model that had been built up over time with us, and we knew each other quite well. We also had data, and we had some very excellent modelers outside government with whom we didn't talk much at all, who were very keen as this FMD incident turned into an outbreak, turned into a bigger outbreak, turned into the biggest outbreak that a previously free country in the developed world had had. So modelling was added to our portfolio of tools as we went along. Some things worked well. So what worked well for us was a model that we already had, a model ready to use, a model where we and our modelers knew what we were working with, and collaboration around the world allowed us to deploy that model. And it did help us that the runtime for the model, when we had populated it with the latest day's shed load more outbreaks, was overnight, and the outputs were ready again for those of us getting up at 7 in the morning to start again as we rolled on. So that worked really well. That model had its limitations, and I'll come on to those, but it did allow us, for fairly short run times, to take what we'd learned from the past, and obviously that gets better and better as you populate the model, to predict what should be happening, and then look at what was actually happening and say, well, what's actually going on then? And that did allow us to focus on areas where, say, we should be seeing disease, but we're not seeing it, or we're seeing disease not coming under control where it should be, and allowed things like very focused, very intense disease control to tackle those areas where we weren't seeing the epidemic controlled the way it should be. What didn't work well, we didn't have any in-house modelling capability, so when we started to have to engage at a domestic level, not with our friends in New Zealand, but our friends in the UK who were modelers, we weren't speaking the same language. Data, we had quite a lot of data, but it was limited in some areas. You may remember we learnt a lot about what our sheep industry was doing with very rapid movements of sheep over short times and through markets. So our model wasn't fully populated to be able actually to predict how this outbreak was going to behave. Our modelling didn't cover costs. Actually, when you're making choices in the face of such a big challenge, costs become very large very quickly. And we didn't have a good handle on that, at least not through our modelling. And we didn't have an in-house challenge function. So when external modelling was applied and we started to get the outputs of it, we weren't equipped to be able to have a proper discussion with those external modelers to test that. And we gave them data. But MAF at the time, Ministry for Agriculture, Fisheries and Foods, was completely snowed under. We gave our external friends the data we had, the way we had it, and we weren't able to give them all the details that sat behind that data that told them exactly what that data was telling them. And we were, and they were, looking at an epidemic curve. This shows very effectively the impact of a different pair of data sets. The red line is the confirmed cases at a given point in time. The histogram is when those animals were infected. Now, at this point in late March, the models, and I don't have one of the old model predictions, were predicting an escalating epidemic with no apparent end and a very long time period. At that point, hard decisions needed to be taken because that needed to be reversed. The epidemic was not coming under control using the traditional methods of stamping out, tracing, dangerous contacts, stamping those out, further tracing. It apparently wasn't working, and we moved to a number of interventions, but the classic one was the contiguous cull, to start to cull all of the farms around an infected place to get ahead of this rapidly moving, and it was geographically spreading apparently, epidemic. That cost a lot of money. It also appeared to be showing that the controls weren't working, and our Minister of the Day lost his job. Actually, by about May, we were able to work that data back and know what was truly happening to the epidemic, working from dates of infection. And the epidemic curve had already peaked. In fact, it had already started to fall. We will never know whether those decisions would have been different, but they certainly were not fully informed by an understanding of what the data was telling us. And that's not a criticism of anybody. That just tells us how important it is for us and the people who are doing modelling to fully understand the data that is before us. So, by 2016, by now, we've learned quite a lot. So what have we done that's different? We now have an in-house capability. We have few but perfectly formed scientists producing an in-house model called Exodus, which is our own model. We have a quantitative modeling capability that, wow, that moved quick. That allows us to have informed models. We have an atmospheric dispersion model because for mouth disease, aerosol spread, we're prepared for that now in a way that we weren't before. Our capability in-house is not just to model for ourselves, but also to have people who will talk to and engage with external modelers. And we have a modeling contract that we maintain all of the time. And we have constant engagement with our external modelers. So an external modeling group knows our available data as well as we know it ourselves. And we have more data than we've ever had before, so we have different reporting systems. We have built and integrated an economic model that bolts onto our in-house model and can take outputs from other people and apply economic modeling. And I've talked about commissioning. We also have an in-house ability to challenge. So this is the Strategic Advisory Council of GFRA, Exotic Disease Group. which has got a modeler on it, which will, with us, challenge the model outputs so that we can quality assure them. And on quality assurance, there's a cross-government approach to quality assurance. The story behind that one is not a lesson learned from foot and mouth disease, but a lesson learned from the Western Rail Line franchise, where we got the sums wrong. And we got into a big pickle with being challenged by the possible winners of that contract who challenged the modelling with success. So across government, we now have very strict modelling controls. So that changed. What sorts of things do we do with that? Well, integrating epidemiology and economic outputs allow us to do scenario analysis. So these are the outputs from some work we did from a contingency planning exercise that we ran in 2015. And what you're seeing is whisker diagrams, so the outlying estimates, the central estimate, for different types of intervention, stamping out, and various types of vaccination. And it shows different things. It shows us that we can make different choices and have different impacts. So if you want to minimize your number of infected premises, you go for vaccination because you've reduced your number of infected premises. If you want your duration of your outbreak, first to last IP, to be shortest, you'll also go for vaccination. But if you want the total cost to be least, in our situation, this was a scenario that seeded disease into 3 of the administrations of the UK's 4 administrations, you'd stick with good old stamping out. Of course, that doesn't take into account the social pressures that might call for vaccination. It also allows us to look at who pays the cost. So if you look at the various scenarios, the costs vary, not by that much, but who bears the cost varies. So if we change from stamping out, government bears this much cost, the industry bears quite a lot of consequential losses, but you move to vaccination, depending on what you choose, you can progressively reduce the government cost, but look at the overall cost and the impact on farming. So therein lies the stuff of a debate, which we are continuing to have with our livestock keepers about what the best approach is and how we deal with that. So, who do we model for? Well, we model for decision makers. And it's not only about what we can achieve in the face of an outbreak. Personally, I think some of the best work you can do with modelling is when there isn't an outbreak. And you can look at the possible things that will happen in your particular situation and think about what you might do. So we've done that with vaccination, and we know that you can seed disease into certain parts of the UK, happened to have happened in 2007, and your epidemic won't take off. It's very hard to get it to take off just because of the trading patterns, and therefore stamping out is your best policy, and vaccination really wouldn't be justified. There's other parts of the country where, as you might expect, it really does take off, and then you're back to the debate that I was describing earlier. In outbreaks, I've already talked about the need, if you've got an ongoing outbreak, to predict and evaluate the effectiveness of interventions, including the cost and including whether you've got the resources to deliver that intervention, because we've developed our models so they've got a resource component. Have we got enough vets? Are they clean or are they dirty? So can we send them on tracings, or can we only send them onto infected premises because they're going to give foot and mouth disease to the tracings? And so on. You need to integrate your model in that way. And modeling is also useful because it gives you outputs that allow you to communicate. You can produce diagrams like I've just used. You can produce histograms. You can start to communicate to people what the likely things are to happen. And here's the big warning. Beware the central estimate. Beware the most likely outcome of your model, because if you put that in the hands of your press office or give it to your minister just before they go out to talk to the press, that's likely to become fact. And actually, you had been saying it's anything from here to here what might happen, but we think the most likely thing is broadly here, and we have all of this uncertainty, and it all gets lost. And that's really important both in our decision-making and our communication. So, our limitations. Personally, I think modeling is useless right at the beginning of an outbreak. You don't have enough data to populate your model. Your scenarios might be very useful because you know where you currently have disease, but you don't know whether it's your index case, you don't know where it came from, and you don't know where it's spread to. So right at the beginning, you're probably best with your expert opinion, well informed by work you did earlier with your model. They really aren't reality. They really are just an approximation of the world that has within it the truth, but you don't know exactly where the truth lies. There's limited certainty, of course. I've covered this already. The next thing, of course, is they'll never give you the answer, because the answer is a multiple set of pressures that ultimately make your decision. So the decision makers are considering what we, the people talking to our modelers and thinking only about disease control outcomes, think. Us vets, us economists, us epidemiologists, but then round here come all of the other things. And these can become overwhelming, and that, of course, is where the debate about vaccination comes back, even if you think that stamping out might be your best policy. So challenges, communicating uncertainty, access to data in real time. We've tried very hard to get as close as we can to real-time data, but when an outbreak really takes off, getting information from the front line back to you in the center, because it needs to be in the center to inform your modeling, is very hard. Engagement. Do people trust what these models are telling you? And that's not just policymakers, decision makers. It's also the sector that you're going to impose that decision on. If they think a decision's been based on a model and they don't trust it, they won't accept your decisions. Engagement. Conflicting advice is interesting. So we now have access. We're set up so we have a range of modeling outcomes. We could try really hard to get them all to coalesce onto a single point. Actually, we think the strength is probably having the varying outputs and understanding what sits behind them, so we can interrogate that and have a better understanding of where in this uncertain world the truth might lie. So that's our journey on modeling. And what I wanted to illustrate with that is it's an innovative and constantly growing, and those of you who've been to the modeling sessions, I didn't dare go, will have seen that there are constantly new techniques available to us to apply. But you've got to take that, you've got to harness it, you've got to understand it and embed it in your system and have that interaction. And without it, cutting-edge technology isn't really very useful to you. So that was what I wanted to discuss with you there. This next bit is just to talk a bit about how we might apply the tool that EuFMD has provided with us. So the EuFMD online training platform, sitting within the overall EuFMD offer, which includes real-time training. We thought that was really useful. We thought APHA is the Animal and Plant Health Agency. It's where our state veterinary service sits. We have a constant training effort. There's some national and regional disease exercises involved in that. We thought this was a really good thing to have. We are in transition from a country which is very experienced in foot and mouth disease from 2001, a bit topped up by 2007, to starting to lose our corporate memory about what foot and mouth disease really looks like and what dealing with it is really like. So our training need is changing over time. And we've got less people who train our newcomers. So we can't rely on that transfer either. So how did we harness the online training? We did it by looking at what was available with EuFMD and tailoring it for our own needs. And we were really pleased that EuFMD were prepared to do that with us. So they are giving us this resource, but allowing us to work with them to make it relevant to a UK situation. So if you do that, you can give an understanding and embed into it what your legal powers are. They vary worldwide. They're different. In fact, in the UK, they're different in Scotland, England, Wales, and Northern Ireland. So we can embed in the system things specific to us. We can use all the value that it brings, the fact that you don't need to bring your participants all to the same place to run it, that you can allow people to train at their own speed and do it around their business as usual. I think we can annul that. Thank you. And we put quite a lot of effort into that with EUFMD. So I was interested, so I said I'd like to talk about this, and it rapidly became clear that it cost us something. So EUFMD kindly gives all of us member countries 10 credits a year. To send somebody on a real-time training course costs 3 credits. So of our 10 a year, no, 10 a session, 10 per 2 years. So that's quite expensive, but we benefited greatly from that, and we continue to use it. But to bespoke this system to allow us to train 100 people in 2015 cost us 6 credits. That's incredibly good value for money. And by using our own people as well, we're immediately doing train the trainer. So that worked for us really well. We ran it again in 2016, and it cost us fewer credits because we'd already done all the work, so it cost us 4 credits to run a course for 130 people. And I believe we'll continue to use this and deploy it and seek to make it work for us. Content I'm not going to go through, but 2 things. End of course assessment, increasingly really valuable. It's embedded, it's part of the system. We think it's really valuable to make sure we know people have done what we intended. And there's an opening quiz, which I think is on the previous slide. We learned from the pre-course quiz in 2016 that of 116 people that responded to the questionnaire, 87 had got no experience of foot and mouth disease. So our experience is eroding really quickly. So this is of real value to us. Post-course, we want our people to use the follow-up, and they're inspired to do so, so it's available to us. What sort of feedback do we get? Well, we get good feedback. So here's a thing that you can read, and what they can do at the end. But what do they say? The EuFMD course has been excellent, a real breath of fresh air, quality, detailed, relevant training. That isn't always the case when our staff come and they let me talk to them for an hour and I get a happy sheet at the end that says I wish I'd been at work. Congratulations on the excellent course. It's been really interesting. And from a student, it's a super platform and would be well received by students. So, well done, EuFMD. And there is real value in taking that resource and bending it to your own needs. So we do national and regional exercises, never mind. They're important to us, and they allow our people to practice what they've learnt and allow us to share our expertise. Looking forwards, we are trying to follow the lead of EuFMD, make our own internal resources available online, get it downloadable onto laptops, make those laptops waterproof, disinfectable, able to be taken onto and off-site. With those instructions in your hand, stream images and talk about what you're seeing to somebody who's got the luxury of sitting in a nice warm office where you're in the rain. Facilitating electronic capture in real time so the epidemiologists don't have to wait for a grubby form to come through, but you should never have taken off the IP anyway. And we are so keen on this that we'd like to develop the same sort of system to other notifiable diseases. And I know EuFMD struggles with this idea of, do we only ever just talk about FMD, or does what we do serve the wider need? It definitely serves the wider need. So that was that. A great resource, and if you use it wisely and apply it to your own situation, I think you can get a lot more out of it. Here may be much more relevant to what we've been doing or what you've been doing over the last 3 days, and looking forward. How do we support research and innovation going forwards? So the UK has got a long history of supporting research into foot and mouth disease. Perhaps this is a very good example of a continuing commitment to that. It's the new Plowright building at Pirbright. For me, I live in an office. I do disease control. I don't do things that are more technical than that. It's a shiny lab. But I know the value of shiny labs. It's where really important research is done. And we need to maintain them, and we need to maintain sufficient throughput so that they're there when we need them in an emergency. And in the face of that emergency, sometimes they, in real time, develop new tests, new response capability. So they're really important. But they're expensive. And into them, we put expensive people because they're highly trained. And the technology we use is developing all the time. And every time it develops, the kit you need to work with the technology we're developing gets more expensive. And so we've got an exquisite building with exquisite people inside using exquisite equipment, which is really expensive. And we need to maintain a pipeline of throughput to not only have that when I want it in an emergency, but also maintain it doing what we need it to do for innovation. So there's a few challenges around. There's a lot of money around in the world, but there has been a period of austerity since 2008, affecting the whole world, developed and developing. That uncertainty means the public sectors have been contracting, not just in the size of the civil service, like me sitting in offices, but also our ability to invest. And research funding has changed its nature. Quite often it's gone into big, chunky calls for framework, bids into frameworks, of which animal health will only be a small part. So we have to marshal ourselves to deal with that. Geopolitical instability, the veterinary services are challenged, the disease risks are increasing, so our increasing disease challenges are very real. So we need to respond. One of the ways we're going to respond is to recognize we can't all do it at home anymore. So we've got to coordinate not only between countries, but also between government service and private funders, between charitable funders, whatever shape they are, and the industries themselves, in order to create a really effective pipeline that supports the whole system. And now I'm going to hand over to my friend here, Luke Dalton, who knows this backwards. And Luke, you're going to tell us about what you've been doing most recently.
Hello, everybody. Sorry to hijack this keynote speech when you thought you were getting Nigel. I'm the project manager for STAR-IDES. It's a global network for animal disease research. What it is, it's a network of research funders and program managers. We all get together, share information about what we're doing, the problems we're facing, and how we can address them together. The acronym is a bit of a mouthful. Global Strategic Alliances for the Coordination of Research on the Major Infectious Diseases of Animals and Zoonoses. Like I said, it's a global initiative to coordinate research on infectious diseases of animals. This project came to an end last year. It's into its next phase now, the IRC, the International Research Consortium on Animal Health. I've jumped the gun a little bit. Right, STAR-IDES, these were the core members. There are about 24 core partners and from 18 countries. There are a few industry partners, Oatis and Marielle as well. But we broadened that to set up regional networks, one to complement a good network we already had in Europe that's been running since 2005. So we set up one in Asia and Australasia, one for Africa and the Middle East, and one for the Americas. And that's those countries moving in there. We also ran some foresight studies through STAR-IDES to identify the R&D needs that we'll need to meet the challenges in the next 20 years. A few of the things that came out are listed up there. The research pipeline, investment in basic research, really important. Sound public policies relating to science and technology. Maintenance of capacity, it's really important, and it's something we can not do as well as we could in times of financial pressure. Partnerships and collaborations actually rated really highly, not just for us as funders, but for the research community. We've all got to work together here. Knowledge management and knowledge and technology transfer. of course. Here's a research pipeline. Every stage is very important, but as highlighted in the foresight studies, basic research is something we need. Right, the International Research Consortium on Animal Health started this month. It's a group. Well, it's a group that's signed up and agreed to align their research programs to address research gaps that are identified by a number of working groups. So we're looking at to contribute to new and improved animal health strategies for at least 30 priority diseases and issues. Types of deliverables the IRC are going to come up with are candidate vaccines, diagnostics, therapeutics, and other animal health products and procedures, key scientific information and tools to support risk analysis and disease control. We've got 16 partners from 13 countries, plus one international organisation, 3 from industry, and the European Commission actually hoping to join as well. We've got a total combined research budget of US $2.5 billion. That bullet point is up there not to show off, not to imply that we're going to be coordinating all of that money. That's just to show the scale and the potential to really make some advancements, to really have an impact if we do this properly. So it's a great opportunity. The European Commission are supporting the Secretariat for the IRC with a $3 million grant through Horizon 2020, so very grateful for that. This is the governance structure. Oh, which is the buzzer thing. Okay, these are the working groups. These are the priority diseases and cross-cutting issues that we've identified so far. You see, foot and mouth is one of those. We've got African swine fever, PRRS, brucellosis, and some cross-cutting issues like immunology and vaccinology, generic technologies there, and diagnostics. These working groups are tasked with performing a gap analysis, focused detailed gap analysis, and then developing a research roadmap. They are overseen by a scientific committee who vet the outputs of these working groups, prioritise them a bit more, take them to the IRC Executive Committee up the top there. This is the panel of research funders who have agreed to fund the needs that are coming out of these working groups. We've got the Secretariat off to the side there. The Secretariat's made up of 5 organisations. It's led by GFRA. We've got OIE as a partner there. We've got a full-time staff member based at OIE working on this. We've got CAB International, CABI. You're probably familiar with their CAB abstracts databases in various publications. We've got IFA Europe, which is the International Federation for Animal Health, and BBSRC, who have been with us since the beginning, leading these coordination activities. It's just a photo from the launch. The types of partners we've got: national funding bodies and program owners, research institutes where they manage their own program and have a say about which research they do, some pharmaceutical industry partners, and representatives of the diagnostic industry. I mentioned that foot and mouth was one of the priority diseases coming out. We'd like a working group to produce a gap analysis for us. There's already this excellent network up and running, the GFRA, which I'm sure you're all familiar with. They're doing some great work, so we hope to try and work with them to get that gap analysis to inform the funding panel, the IRC Executive Committee. Further information, there's our website, or drop me or my boss, Alex Morrow, a line. Thank you. Hand it back to Nigel to finish up. You don't want to summarise?
Well, thank you very, very much indeed to Nigel and to Luke for that. I think what we've seen is that you have recognised that your needs from your experience have driven innovation. Innovation has had to take place for reasons of your the economic requirements, the difficult situation that you faced, and that innovation is obligatory to survival in a risk-based world. But you've done more than innovate, you've also put it into practice, and you've given us a message about keeping that going. At the beginning of the week, I think I asked the question, do you feel you're working harder and harder for less and less? I think what I've taken, at least from this last session, is that there's people out there who are really concerned with the pipeline, really concerned with not only maintaining expertise, but there would be actually new tools being available and to support that pipeline. So in closing, I'm going to ask Owen to come up and join me. I think the last presentation also made a link to the GFRA, and I may ask if Wilna is here, if she would also like to say something at the end, or someone from GFRA. From my side, I think probably with all of you, I just have to say thank you to the incredible numbers of innovative talks that we've heard, often really funded on a shoestring and done out of the dedication and the joy of doing good work with collaborators that we've seen over this week. So money isn't everything. The spirit that you've shown, I think, is a lot of the success that we've seen. But I'll hand over to Owen now.
Thank you, Keith. Yes, indeed, it's been a really fascinating and interesting few days, and I thought some really useful new ideas came out. The theme of this session was the practice of innovation, and I think we've seen a lot of examples of innovative approaches, but importantly, how they can be put into practice, particularly the importance of working with partners in the private sector, whether those are farmers making decisions, companies, retailers, other stakeholders in the process, the importance of drilling down into the factors which affect decision making, whether those are decisions on contingency planning, decisions on whether and how to use vaccination, decisions on how to interpret the results of tests. With the really impressive work presented on the continual technical innovations in diagnostics, in vaccines, in surveillance, there was some really great work presented, and it's a real testament to the resilience of the foot and mouth disease research community that every 2 years we see these really wonderful new advances coming up. I want to just take this opportunity to remind you all that the online conference will be in place for the next 3 weeks. You'll have an opportunity to look at any talks which you were unable to attend. Certainly there were many that I missed because of the parallel sessions, and there'll be an opportunity to interact online and flag up those issues. I also have to really take this opportunity to thank our hosts, and also to say thanks to Keith and his team, who really did a fantastic job. So well done, Keith, and the EuFMD team. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Owen. That was well, we've really, certainly all the way through, really appreciated your input into the program. And I would just ask for a couple of minutes if there's anyone who would like to give us a flavor of what they felt were innovations that have inspired them in the last few days, or something that they'd really like to put into practice after this. It would be a great, I think, if any of you would like to give a feedback. If GFRA would also like to remind us that, or bring to attention any point, FAO or OIE, or the EC, we're also happy to take that. So there is a microphone. Feel free to use it.
Found a wonderful presentation on innovation in PCR technology, where we have flaps, so the PCR get wings, and it will fly more with more precision, with better sensitivity and better specificity. And I think it's a very nice and well presented paper on how to improve your test. So that was one of the best things I saw.
Thank you, Aldo. Anyone else got any things that have inspired them? Or any practices that they want to initiate or improve? Luis.
So, okay, so the first part, there were plenty of talks that were very inspiring about ways of addressing particularly surveillance. Some of the talks that we saw today on lateral flow device uses of and improvements of the use of these devices, I think that's not only for diagnostics but for research. I think that's something that has inspired me to look into this and apply some of this into our ongoing studies in the field. And I don't know if Wilna is going to talk about GFRA. Is Wilna here? If not, I guess I should perhaps on behalf of the GFRA Executive Committee tell you that next year we're going to have the GFRA scientific meeting, and that we're very excited because it's going to be in Korea. And we have some of our Korean hosts with us here, and we're all excited, and we're looking for contributions, ideas. The themes of the meeting are not completely set yet. We know we're going to dedicate some time to look at swine, the role of swine in FMD, because it's a very relevant part in that part of the world where we are in Asia. So, but there is we're very open to suggestions. We don't have a website open for the meeting yet, but it will probably sometime in January we will have the website up and running, and hopefully we'll get some good ideas for themes that we should have during that meeting. So, hope to see you all in Korea in exactly 1 year from now. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I'd also like to thank GFRA for organizing the funding for, I think there was for five people plus themselves, and they organized a competition for submission of abstracts and then funded those. There are several institutions that funded several places here, not just the scientific institutions. Many self-funded people here, so we're appreciative of all the efforts to get here. I hope you found it was good value and inspiring. Anyone else with anything that they'd like to add? Yes, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to just refer to two presentations, both on modeling, but then with a very direct application. One from Simon Gibbens from Purbright, using Bayesian statistics for estimating transmission parameters, which has a bit of a benefit over the conventional approach. And the one from Jose Gonzalez that was about modeling the time or the approach to stop vaccinating in Bolivia. Very applicable and very much an issue that we come across in many countries.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, the process yesterday of voting for best papers, we had a wide range of submissions. So it's clear that a lot of you appreciated a lot of different parts of the work, from work on biosecurity through to work on farmers' perceptions of disease control. So I think we really do celebrate the diversity of your work that you've brought here, and we'd like to thank you very much for that. FAO or OIE, if you're here, would you like any comments from you or from the EC? Samia, there we are. Laura.
Yeah, no, I completely support what you just said. There was a huge diversity of presentation, from phylogenetic trees to really field feedback. It was really great to have the opinion of everyone and to share experience and views during this group discussion. No, I think it was really a success, and at least on my side, I learned a lot, and well, I hope being there in 2 years.
Thank you, thank you. I think, Samia, you're also just looking for the microphone.
First of all, I want to thank EOFMD for organizing this very good meeting. Actually, it was probably the best meeting I ever attended, in my opinion. We have good presentation and very diverse group, including countries. And that's very important to bring the countries in to listen to some good ideas and maybe think that we can convert that into application in the future. So they are the users. So doing this, I think we continue doing this in the future meeting so we can have improving what we have for the tools for the global strategy. So that is the best thing I seen here. And I would like to continue with that. And hopefully we're able to get more countries to participate in this meeting in the future. So let's plan on that for next time. Thank you, Keith and the team. Wonderful meeting. We all appreciated and enjoyed it as well. Lots of food. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Samia. I'd like to also thank FESOL and the Commission, who've actually funded the work of the Standing Technical Committee and the Special Committee. Thanks very much to FAO, OIE, DETRA, GFRA, and many others who've actually sponsored people to come to this meeting. In the end, it's a partnership of all our efforts. If we provided a platform through this meeting that helps you with your work and helps, let's say, our commercial partners as well, our government partners, to put things into practice, then it will be well worth it. Just in closing, I would like to just take a moment to say thank you to those people behind the scenes who've done so much in the organization. Owen, if I can ask you to take those two. Okay.
Where are these going?
Well, I'd like to ask Maria Joao, Yolanda Vaz, Erica, Cecile, Emanuela, if you come forward, Chiara, Nadia, and Laura. As you know, I don't play games, or at least they don't work when I try here, but Owen will give you a massage. I mean, they're for each of you. Thank you. Wow, I didn't expect the kissing ceremony. It just gets more fun. And there's a few others too. I know this may sound like it's going to take a long time, but we'll get through it. Paolo Motta, who helped us throughout the week. Jenny, Karima, and Mark Hovari, please come forward. No. Enough. I didn't rehearse any of this. No. This is getting embarrassing. There we are. Enough of the chaos. And finally, Owen. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And I'm not
kissing style. That's for good kissing.
So thanks to all of you. Thank you very much to Maria Joao and Yolanda for you've been incredible hosts. You really have. And you've helped us to find this extraordinary place. So I hope you've all enjoyed it. Please don't run away immediately. Just use the facilities. Enjoy the place. And let's hope we see you again before 2 years, hopefully in the meeting next year, if not in between. Thank you, everyone.